Hi, welcome to Android. In the previous session, we discussed about the fundamental concepts of intent. We understood how intent works and what are implicit and explicit intents. In this session, we will develop some code sample for intent and see it in action. For this, we'll create a new activity called intent activity with two buttons to show two different types of intents being fired. Now here is we have one activity I have just created called intent activity with two button, browser intent and dialer intent. So when I click browser intent button, a browser get launched through an intent and here again through an intent. So let us start with a simple class. We'll select this, give the same package name, and we have a class ready. Now what we'll do is that since there are two buttons, let us declare two variables, name as browser underscore bt and dialer underscore bt. Since button is not imported, so let us import that, and then we'll use our most important method on create. And what is the first thing we generally do? Good, set content view, and we know the which layout we are going to use, intent activity, the one we have this one, this is the activity, right? Now let us get the reference to those two objects, browser button object. So put the button for browser button and then same thing for dialer. From where I am getting this ID, from where I am getting this ID, intent browser BT, intent dialer BT, it is from here, right? Check the ID, intent browser BT and intent dialer BT. So these are the ID of those objects, so that's why we are getting this. Now once you have these two, next thing is that add a listener to these buttons. So what standard thing is browser underscore bt dot set on click listener. This is a standard method we have seen earlier, and I am passing this. But how does this works? It expects a listener object implementing an interface called OnClick listener, but this class does not implement a interface OnClick listener. So what we will do is that we will change it here. We have to import the interface. Just be careful, import the one which is in the view. And then you write a code here which will get triggered depending on which button get. So instead of, since we have both the buttons, so let us put it for both the listener. So whenever either of these two button, browser or dialer, is clicked, basically it will trigger the listener object called this, because this listener object from this class implements OnClick listener, and it indirectly, because the listener object will go to OnClick method here. So what do you do here? First you find out which button he clicked. And how you find out? Very simple. You find out the ID of the object which get clicked. And he will say, okay, and then very simple, just check if view ID equals to r.id.intent browser bt, then do something. Else if you have clicked dialer button, then do something. So what we are going to do here is that we are going to create a new intent and fire it. My browser intent, correct? Let me import this. New intent dot action view. And then you have to pass the data here, and this will be some URL. Once the intent object is ready, now to fire this intent. How you fire? There are various ways. You can say start activity, you can say start service. So depending on what is your intent and what you want to do, you can start it. My browser intent. Okay. Now another thing, similarly what we will do is that we will fire another intent, and the interesting part about these two intents are that both of them are implicit intent. What it means is that I am not telling which activity will handle this event, this message object which I am sending, who will handle it. I am just telling here is the data and here is the action. Some activity need to handle it, but which activity I am not telling it. Here it won't be view, it will be dial, and there are a standard set of implicit intent which is there. You can create your own intent and it is perfectly fine. The only thing you have to be careful though is that the data you are passing inside URI.parse is not anything randomly. It has to be a standard format. So if I remove everything TL and just put anything, my telephone, semicolon something, it won't work. So just be careful that there is a standard format which you should use. Okay. Now we are pretty much ready with our code. If you see this in this code, if you see, we have created a class here, and these two are implicit intent. So first implicit intent is this and second implicit intent is this. So basically in this implicit intent we said that here is action view and here is a data www.cloney.com and some activities should take care of it. But which activity? So Android comes up with a built-in activity called browser, and who is listening for action view action for a particular intent action called intent.actionView. So the moment I launch this, that particular browser activity gets triggered by Android. Now again, when I am saying that send the intent with an action called action dial, there is already an activity in your phone which is called a dialer activity. Now that get triggered because he has been that dialer activity is registered to listen action dial, and that's pretty much it does it. So let me just close this and see how it goes. The layout class, put it in main activity, put it in Android manifest. The next thing is that put it in the main activity class to launch this. Now where is this guy? 16 intent. Now am I doing anything? No, there is nothing happening right now. So what we will do is that we will put that intent and launch this activity from here. So for that I'm just copying it and putting it here. Okay, so we'll call it instead of that declaring that intent object again and again, what you could do is that intent my intent and then you can just use that variable again and again instead of creating so many objects unnecessarily. It just saves the memory of the JVM. Now here I will mention intent activity. Once intent activity is connected to the menu's intent, we are pretty much ready to go. Okay. So let us try to run this application. So our emulator is starting. So let us give it a few minutes and it should be ready. Now our emulator is ready. So let us see that how it goes. And it is a good idea to see. So now our application Traveler Assistant has been launched. We'll go to the menu and we know that it is under more intent. So when I click intent, that intent activity is basically launched. Now once it is launched, if I click the browser intent, it will launch a browser activity which will bring the website whatever you have sent as a data, and in this case it is launching a website called cloney.com. Okay. Now let us go back and see the dialer intent. If I click the dialer intent, it launches the activity called dialer and it shows you the number which you have passed through your source code. And if I click now dial, it will start dialing it. Although in emulator you cannot dial it, but at least it simulates that you're dialing or something. Okay. And that kinds of wraps up the complete sample for how to fire a intent, implicit intent from an activity. For explicit intent, in this place you will give the name of this, it takes context, and here you will give the name of the class where you have to go. See this one, this is explicit intent, right? This is an explicit intent because I am saying that please create this intent object and destination of this intent object is this class. start activity, but in this one it is implicit intent. I am saying that some action has to be taken on this data, but I don't know which activity will handle this. So these two are implicit intent, and that's pretty much wraps up our intent exercise. Hi, welcome to Android. In the previous session, we discussed about the fundamental concepts of thread. We discussed that how handler and async task classes are used for writing multi-threaded applications in Android. In this session, we will develop some code for thread-based applications which will use a handler class, and we will try to understand how to use handler class for any of your multi-threaded application. For this purpose, we will create a new activity called thread activity. So let us go and see how the thread activity looks like. Now, before the thread activity looks like, let me just close the other one. I have created a layout for thread activity which looks very simple, just like this. Thread calculate pi and toast. So what happening is that there are two events happening in a multi-thread. Generally in a multi-thread, I want to show that two things are happening, how they are interfering with each other and how they are working with each other. Now, if there is a single thread, so let us see that there are two tasks. Calculate pi and toast. If calculate pi is the work which is going on, then at the same time if it is a single thread, then this toast will not work. So if you put both in the same thing, then until this work complete, this will not do. But what happens if this calculate pi is taking lot of time? If this is taking lot of time, then you are blocked and this will not happen. So what generally we do is that we create a new thread and put this one into that thread, and when it happens it will display here, but till that time I am fine to click this button and do something else. So that is what a multi-threaded will show. So first what we will do is that we will not use multi-threaded, we will use a single threaded and then try to do it. Then we will write a traditional multi-threaded and then we will see the problem, and then finally we will change the code to see that the right way to write multi-threaded code. So let us go ahead and start a basic activity class. We will call it thread activity. Okay. Now once this class is ready, what is the next thing we have to do? As usual, there are few buttons, and for them we need to create a listener object. So we will implement the OnClick listener. Okay. Let us import this, the one in the view package, and then it will say add unimplemented methods. That's fine, we'll take care. But before that, we'll say on create this one, and since there are two buttons, so we'll use that button calculate pi and then so toast. So there are two buttons. I just want to declare the variable for both of them. And as usual, set content view r dot layout dot, we know that, right, thread activity, and then create object for those two buttons. So as simple, let me just put it here, we'll see it later. Button find view by id r dot id dot, what is the name of button id? Do you remember? Whenever you are in confusion, just go there and find out the id. Thread calculate pi bt. What is this button id? Thread toast bt. Okay, so that is what you have to decide here. Thread calculate pi bt. Now same thing for this here. But in this case, the ID will be thread toast bt. And then there is a one edit text as well, where the pi value which is calculated. So basically there is one task which we are doing, a long running task called calculating pi, and we will try to run it first in a same thread, then in a different thread, and then we'll see the what is the problem it is happening. So let us create edit text box et and the pi value. Once you have done this, what is the next thing to do? Once you have both the buttons and edit text, next is just to set OnClick listener, correct? So we'll just set pi dot set OnClick listener, this. So that's pretty much completes our onCreate method. Now once you are done with the onCreate method, there are a few other things we still have to do it, and that is OnClick. So when the button is clicked, when somebody clicks, let us first find out which button got clicked, and for that we know what to do, right? v dot get id. If view id equals to r dot id dot thread pi button, then do something else if view id equals to r dot id thread toast bt. So if user has pressed the calculate pi button, then do whatever action you want to do, put it here if you want to thread. Now let us assume that user has, there is a single thread model. So what we will do is that user will click a thread calculate pi button, and here we will calculate the pi value. Now how do I calculate the pi value? Pi value equals to, there is a class called pi dot compute. We'll look into this class, just give me a second. Compute pi, decimal places after this, dot to the string. Now let me show you that from where does this pi class comes. So basically I have just copied one class called pi.java, and this has nothing to do with Android. This is basically a class which is I have just put it to create a pi value with how many digits you want. So 1600 digits if you want, then you can put it like this. If you want inverse and scale, you can do it like this. So there are two methods, very simple, compute pi and arc10. Now this takes some time, and that's why I wanted such a method to do that. Now you can use this pi class as it is in your thing, or you can create your own class which is doing some long running task. So idea was to create a class with some long running task. Okay, you can remove this method, you don't need it. You can use just focus on this one. Now once I have done this, let us try to run this activity and see what happens. So after this it will compute. What it will do is that it will set the value into that one. So let us assume pi underscore value underscore et dot set text. Okay, set text pi value text, and then we'll just say pi value. If somebody has clicked the toast button, then he has to just show the toast. That is, toast is basically a pop-up kind of a mechanism. Okay, here you will display, hey, you click toast button, and this duration will make it short so that we can see the value. Then call show. Do a little bit formatting. So basically this is what our very simple class is there. So what is there? I just created two buttons, one edit text, one string pi value, get the variables assigned to the objects, set the OnClick listener, and then in the OnClick, if I click the calculate pi button, then calculate pi and put it in the text. If I do this, then this. Now if you see in this whole activity, there is no two thread, there is a single thread model. So if I click this one, then it will keep doing this, and this one will wait for that, correct? So let us see what happens. But before that, this is a new activity, so you have to put it inside Android manifest as well. So let us put that. Let us put it that. Thread activity, correct? thread activity, and we have to also trigger it from our traveler assistant activity.java. Somewhere there is a thread menu. There is thread menu for 17. So and this one will be thread activity. So the menu will launch this class. Okay, and that's pretty much we need to do, and let us see that how it goes. Okay, and generally I try to find out what is going on by doing this. So it is saying starting activity intent, this one. So let us see that. Now once you have reached here, let us see more in this menu, thread. Now here is this is the activity which we just created. Now in this one, I will click first calculate pi and then I will click toast, and you will see that until this guy completes, this toast is of no value. So basically there is a single thread. So I calculated this one, and now I am clicking this. That came after this came, right? Let us try again. See, calculate pi 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. My clicked 4 times did not come until this guy completed. Why? Because it is a single threaded. So obviously until this completes, it won't work. Now that's not what I want. What I want is, let me go back. What I want is that I will calculate pi and let it go in its own thread, but I can keep doing anything else. Like if I click toast, it should work. So if I calculate pi, let it go in its own thread, and when I say toast, it should work. And when this guy is done, the value should be displayed into this one. So now what I will do, let us go and change our source code. So our code is, where is the code? Thread activity. What we will do here, we will put it in a thread, and then we will see that how it works. Now what we are going to do is very simple. We will create here new thread. You know, if you are not aware of how the threads are created, even basic Java, I would suggest that please try to refer our Java courses, Java classes, and see if you can pick a few ideas from there. Okay. So I am just writing a thread class here, new thread. So what this code does, let us go through this sample code. What I did is that the moment I will click a calculate pi button, now I am creating a new thread, and inside this new thread there is a run method. Inside that I have put this one and I have said start. So it will start this, and this will do this work, and once it is done, it will display that value which it calculated into a edit text box, and let me continue with other buttons and do whatever I want. That's what I want, right? So let us do this. I did this, and then I will say run it. Okay, so here is the menu, more and thread. Now if I do click this, I have not done yet. If I click this, it will let me do this as well, and it will not wait for this one. So let us click calculate pi, and then I will say toast. See, it is working, right? Wow, but it crashed. There is some problem, and the problem is what is very interesting part of the thread in Android. Now let me show you the Android problem here. If you see here, we need to just discuss this one. What does it says? It says that only the original thread that created a view hierarchy, read this one, can touch its view. What it means is that if you create a new thread, then from new thread you cannot modify or change a UI widget or view object which was created in the main thread. So this is the error which is coming up, and it is not allowed in Android. Now you will say, wait, what is wrong? The wrong is that inside this thread here, okay, here this pi underscore value underscore et dot set text. Now this object was created where? In this thread, that is the main thread. Now a widget which is created in the main thread cannot be accessed from another thread even if it is in the same class. So Android says that if you are trying to manipulate the UI which was created in the main thread from some other thread, I will not allow it. And that's why this line is giving error here. This line is giving error. So this is not allowed in Android. Now how to solve this problem? To solve this problem, what they have done is, now this is the area, this is the line which is not acceptable to Android. He says that since this view or widget of the UI was created in the main thread, you cannot manipulate it from the another thread. Now how do you solve this problem? And that is where a concept called handler comes in the picture. Now let us see that how handler will solve this problem. If you want to reproduce this problem, let us go again. It is not just one time, it will keep coming. Okay, so I will just show you the same problem again. So before you do it, let us clean up your stack trace. If you want to clean up this, just click this and it goes away. Now I will show you a fresh problem. Again I can reproduce. I will say calculate, it will go ahead, it will let me click this, but then see that this happened, but there is some other problem. Again force close and this error, and it will keep happening every time. And the problem is you cannot modify a UI widget and view which was created from main thread from another thread. And that is the problem you have to solve in Android. Now how do you solve that problem? The problem to solve it is through a mechanism called handler mechanism. How does it work? So for that, what we do is that we create a handler object and use that to pass the message from new thread to the main thread. So basically this thread which we created, from here I will pass the message to this main thread and use it there. Let me just write the code and maybe you will understand what I am trying to say. So let me just start with creating a handler object. How I create a handler object? Very simple. I will create a private class my handler extends handler, and here there is a method. First you have to import this handler, don't import the logging one but import this one, and then unimplemented. Okay, you have to override a method called handle message, public void handle message. Now what is happening is that here we are creating a handler object, and this handler object will be used to communicate between this thread and the main thread which created this text box. So what we are going to do is we are going to declare here a object of type my handler, because we have just created an object my handler. So let me just create my handler Okay, very simple. So I just created a my handler object from the class which I have done here. And what do I do here? Here what I am going to do is that what I did it in that thread. So this value I will remove it and put it here. Okay. Now where is this object created? It is not created inside this thread, it is created in the main thread. So he is fine to access this value, but he was not fine to access that value. Interesting thing is this thread is able to access this value. Why? Because this is a string. So the second thread can access the primitive data type of first thread but cannot access the view and UI widget of the first thread. So that is the restriction Android has it, so you have to understand. And because of that he is not able to do that. Now once I make these two simple changes, we have to also send a communication message from second thread to the first thread that hey, I am done and go do whatever you want to do now. So you can, the way it works is that my handler dot send empty message like this. You can pass 0, but there is a other parameter as well. Now once you do this, the control comes to here and he execute this handle message, and since this goes to the main thread, he is fine. So basically handler object is the mechanism to communicate between the other threads to the main thread or between various thread as well. And you can pass the message from one thread to other thread and do it. If you want to learn more about this one, you can go to the Android documentation and read little bit about handler methods and various methods and constructor. Okay. So now let me just see that how after I have made the changes and I have done the formatting to look it nicely. Let me see what happens. Okay. And this time again let us clean up the problem and see if it happens again. Now let us see how the thread activity works this time. Now I will again say calculate pi, and then immediately I will try to click toast and see what happens. So I said calculate pi and then I said toast. It happened. Again toast. See, and the pi value, when it was done, it happened. So now I have a real multi-threaded application where at one side that pi value keep going on, whenever it is done it will display, and on the other side I can do whatever I want to do, and I have shown you an example by clicking some pop-up and message like toast. Okay, so this was an example of developing a multi-threaded application in Android in a very simplistic way.